Picture the moment you sign the papers for your first home. There's a specific smell to that day. It smells like fresh paint, expensive candles, and success. You're standing in a kitchen that finally belongs to you, holding a set of keys, and you feel like you finally beat the system. You aren't throwing money away on rent anymore. You've secured your piece of the American dream. But I want to pause that frame right there and look at the math behind the feeling. Because while your friends are congratulating you and your parents are proud, the bank is smiling for a very different reason. They know something you don't, or something you've been conditioned to ignore. They know that the moment you turned that key, you didn't just acquire an asset, you signed up to be the primary funding source for a 30-year financial drain. My name is Ray, and today we need to have a very uncomfortable conversation about the biggest lie in personal finance, the idea that your primary residence is an investment. We've been told since birth that buying a home is the smartest thing a human being can do with their money. But if we look at the numbers like a cold-blooded accountant, we start to see that for most people, a house isn't a ladder to wealth, it's an anchor. It's a liability that masquerades as an asset, and it's keeping you tethered to a job you might hate just to keep the lights on in a building you won't truly own until you're too old to enjoy it. If you don't want to miss content that exposes the hidden gears of the economy and helps you see the world for what it actually costs, hit that subscribe button and join the community. We're deconstructing the standard life path one equation at a time. Now, to understand the lie, we have to strip away the emotion and look at the cold, hard receipts. Let's start with the literal definition of an asset. In the simplest terms, an asset puts money into your pocket. A liability takes money out of your pocket. If you buy a small apartment and rent it out for $2,000 a month while your costs are $1,500, that is an asset. It feeds you. But the house you live in, it's a hungry animal. Every single month, it demands to be fed. When you buy a $400,000 house with a 20% down payment, you didn't just spend $80,000. You committed to a $320,000 debt, and that debt comes with a price tag called interest. Over 30 years at a 6% or 7% interest rate, you aren't paying $400,000 for that house. You're paying closer to $800,000. The bank is the one making the investment here, and you are the one providing the guaranteed returns. But the interest is just the visible cost. The real danger lies in what I call the unholy trinity of home ownership: taxes, insurance, and maintenance. These are the vampire costs that never end. There's a saying in finance: rent is the maximum you will pay for housing in a month. A mortgage is the minimum. When the water heater explodes at 2 a.m., that's your problem. When the roof starts leaking, there is no landlord to call. In the real world, a house is a depreciating pile of wood, glass, and concrete that is constantly trying to return to the earth. You have to spend thousands of dollars every year just to keep it in the same condition it was in when you bought it. In any other business, we would call that an operating expense, and it would be a red flag on the balance sheet. But in home ownership, we call it fixing up the place and pretend it's adding value, when really you're just paying to stop the decay. Then there's the opportunity cost, the most painful part of this equation. That $80,000 down payment you locked into the walls, that is dead money. It's sitting there, trapped, not earning you a dime in dividends or compounding in the stock market. You've traded your liquidity, your freedom to pivot, for the privilege of paying property taxes on a piece of dirt the government can still take away if you stop paying them. Now, the most common pushback I get when I say your home is a liability is, "But my house is worth way more than I paid for it." You hear it at every dinner party. Someone's uncle bought a house in 1990 for $150,000 and just sold it for $600,000. On paper, that looks like a $450,000 win. It looks like he's a genius. But this is where the accounting fraud we commit against ourselves gets really dark. Because we look at the buy price and the sell price, and we completely ignore the 30 years of financial bleeding that happened in between. Let's do the real math. If you factor in the interest on that 30-year mortgage, the property taxes that rise every year, the homeowner's insurance, and the 1 to 2% of the house's value you spent every year just to keep the roof from caving in, that $450,000 profit starts to evaporate. When you adjust for inflation, the fact that a dollar in 1990 bought way more than a dollar today, most homeowners find that their investment actually had a real return of nearly zero. In fact, according to historical data adjusted for inflation, U.S. home prices stayed virtually flat for almost a century, from 1990 to 1990. The recent spikes are an anomaly, not a guarantee. You aren't making money, you're just barely keeping pace with the devaluing currency, all while doing the heavy lifting of maintenance for the bank. Then there's the transaction trap. This is the friction that no one talks about. Unlike a stock or a Bitcoin wallet that you can sell with a click for a tiny fee, a house is illiquid, it is heavy, it is stuck. When you decide to sell your asset to realize your gains, the vultures circle. You pay a 5 or 6% commission to real estate agents. You pay closing costs. You pay for staging, repairs, and inspections. By the time you hand over the keys, you've easily shaved 8 to 10% off the top of your total value. If your house appreciated by 10% over 3 years and you sell it, you didn't make a profit, you just broke even after paying the professionals to move your own money. And here is the psychological kicker that keeps us trapped, the upgrade cycle. Because we view our home as an asset, when the value goes up, we feel richer. So what do? We sell the starter home and buy a bigger one. We take that equity and dump it into an even larger liability with higher taxes, higher utility bills, and more rooms to fill with furniture we don't need. We've been conditioned to think that more square footage equals more wealth, but in reality, more square footage just means a bigger target for inflation and maintenance. You're not building a portfolio, you're just building a bigger cage. Think about the golden handcuffs of a 3% mortgage. Millions of people are currently trapped in houses they don't even like anymore because they can't afford to leave. Their asset has become a prison. They can't move for a better job opportunity or a better lifestyle because the cost of rebuying into the market at current rates would destroy their monthly cash flow. If your asset prevents you from taking a better job or moving to a city with more opportunity, is it really an asset or is it a ball and chain that you happen to be allowed to paint whatever color you want? We are obsessed with getting on the property ladder, but we never ask where that ladder is leading. Usually, it just leads to a higher floor in the same burning building of debt. We're working 40 hours a week to pay for a house that we only spend a few conscious hours in, just so we can store the stuff we bought to reward ourselves for working so hard. By now, you might be thinking, okay, if the math is this bad, why does everyone keep telling me to buy? The answer is simple. The system is designed to favor the stationary. Banks, local governments, and even the furniture stores down the street all benefit when you are anchored. When you have a 30-year mortgage, you are a predictable, taxable, and reliable consumer. You aren't going anywhere. You are the perfect customer for the status quo. But we need to talk about the psychological cost of that anchor, the freedom gap. There is a massive difference between being rich on paper and being wealthy in life. I know people with $500,000 in home equity who are stressed about a $2,000 car repair. They are house rich and cash poor. Their wealth is locked in the walls, and the only way to touch it is to sell the roof over their head or take out a home equity line of credit, which is just another fancy way of saying taking out a second loan to pay for the first one. Compare that to the person who rents a modest apartment and takes that $80,000 down payment and puts it into a low-cost index fund. While the homeowner is spending their weekends at Home Depot and their nights worrying about property tax hikes, the renter's money is working in the background 24/7, compounding in the global economy. Historically, the stock market has outperformed residential real estate by a significant margin. If you take that dead money from your down payment and the thousands you save on maintenance and you invest it, you're not just building equity, you're building israb, you're building freedom. You're building a portfolio that pays you dividends, not a house that sends you bills. And let's kill the myth that renting is throwing money away. Renting isn't a loss, it's a service fee. You are paying for a roof, for flexibility, and for the luxury of making your housing costs a fixed number. When you rent, the landlord takes the risk. They deal with the interest rates, the declining neighborhood, and the burst pipes. You are buying the most valuable asset of all, time and mobility. If a career-defining opportunity opens up 3 states away, the renter packs a suitcase and leaves. The homeowner has to wait months for a buyer, pay the 6% commission, and hope the market hasn't dipped. So what is the solution? Am I telling you to never buy a house? No. I'm telling you to stop lying to yourself about why you're doing it. If you want to buy a house because you want a backyard for your dog, or you want to paint the walls neon green, or you want the stability of a specific school district, then buy the house, but categorize it correctly in your brain. It's not an investment. It's a luxury consumption item. It's like buying a nice car or a high-end watch. It's something you buy because it improves your quality of life, knowing full well that it's going to cost you money every single month. When you shift your mindset from "my house is my retirement plan" to "my house is a utility I pay for," your entire financial strategy changes. You stop over-improving the kitchen for a resale value that might never come. You stop buying more house than you need just to maximize your investment. Real wealth isn't found in the square footage of your living room. It's found in the gap between what you earn and what it costs you to live. The smaller your anchor, the faster your ship can move. The next time someone tells you that you're missing out on the housing market, I want you to look at your bank account, look at your liquid investments, and look at your ability to quit a job you hate tomorrow because your overhead is low. Because at the end of the day, a house is just a box to store your stuff. Don't let that box become the coffin for your financial freedom. Audit your life. Run the numbers, and remember, a home is where you live, but an asset is what lets you live however you want. If this deep dive into the homeowner lie changed how you look at those Zillow listings, share it with someone who's currently obsessed with their equity. Let's start making financial decisions based on math, not on myths. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.